Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Join us as we delve into the world's most pressing issues and learn how the people inside work toward a better future for everyone around the world.
Coming up on UN Insider.
1.1 million people have completely exhausted their food supplies and are facing catastrophic hunger.
Starvation and suffering in Gaza. The UN sounds urgent warnings of famine in the Palestinian territory.
If we are to eradicate poverty around the world, we cannot leave half of the world's population behind.
Pushing for a more equal world. The UN hosts a massive gathering focused on closing the gender gap.
This is FFM Community Radio.
A voice for those who often go unheard. Meet some of the people behind a radio station serving refugees in Kenya. Next.
After months of fighting between Israel and Hamas and months of diplomatic efforts, a new resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza came before the UN Security Council Friday.
The result of the voting is as follows: 11 votes in favor, 3 votes against, 1 abstention. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Council.
23 million tons. That's how much debris now litters Gaza. The UN estimates it will take years to clear the rubble and unexploded weapons. More aid is getting into the Palestinian territory, but the threat of famine looms.
All coping mechanisms have been exhausted. And mind you, the coping mechanisms we have seen the past weeks, even months, are people eating bird seeds, animal fodder, wild grass, and weeds. So they have consumed that already. We are beyond that. There's literally nothing left.
Shudaja is monitoring developments inside the halls of the UN. Deja.
Yes, Elaine, this week the UN released its IPC report. IPC stands for Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System. That report warns that the situation in Gaza is catastrophic, with northern Gaza facing imminent famine and the rest of the Strip at risk as well. More than half of all Palestinians in Gaza, 1.1 million people, have no more food supplies. In the classification, there are 5 phases of food insecurity. First, minimal or none. Second, stressed. Third, crisis. Fourth, emergency. And fifth, catastrophe or famine. Each of these phases has important and distinct implications for where and how best to intervene and therefore influences priority response objectives. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres talked to reporters saying that Gaza marks the highest number of people facing catastrophic hunger ever recorded by the IPC system, anywhere, anytime.
This is an entirely man-made disaster, and the report makes clear that it can be halted. Today's report is Exhibit A for the need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. I call on the Israeli authorities to ensure complete and unfettered access for humanitarian goods throughout Gaza and for the international community to fully support our humanitarian efforts.
But how would a ceasefire help change the trajectory of this report? I asked Mr. Arif Hussein, WFP chief economist.
If this is like, let's say, a 6-week ceasefire, do you think the time would be enough to change the trajectory of what you described in the report?
We have enough food to help 2.2 million people in Gaza. So what do we need? We need to make sure that their food can come in. What else do we need? We need to make sure that our people, humanitarians who are actually taking this food in, they are safe. And what else do we need? We need to make sure that people who are receiving this food, they are safe. And is that enough to do it for 1 day? No. 2 days? No. Because it's food, it is water, it's medicine. We need to do it in a very sustained way. Now, my hope is that if there is a 6 weeks peace agreement, it would lead to even more bigger peace or full peace.
Then the High Commissioner of Human Rights, Mr. Turk, warned that Israel may be using food or a lack of food as weapon of war, which would be a war crime. And here is the response from the U.S. State Department.
Let me just say that is not something that we have observed or witnessed, but we continue to be deeply concerned about the report that's indicating that famine is imminent in Gaza.
And then I asked the spokesperson of the UN on the reaction of the U.S. State Department.
What do you see of this contradiction of the UN and the U.S. Department of State?
I mean, obviously, we stand by what our High Commissioner said, and we stand by what the report presented on Monday said. So we wouldn't comment on.
Well, this week, Sudan and Haiti are also on our radar. Just two things to mention. In Sudan, with less than 5% funded of the UN's appeal for $2.7 billion, Sudan is on course to become the world's worst hunger crisis. In Haiti, with Prime Minister resignation, multinational forces yet to be deployed, gangs in the streets of Port-au-Prince, and a humanitarian disaster, everything went wrong in Haiti. It's too difficult to see what's next. And that's all from me, Elaine.
Shudaja, thanks. New leadership is on the way for Haiti, but the Caribbean nation is still in a dire situation. Millions of Haitians are going hungry, and gangs often loot aid shipments. According to UNICEF, 3 out of 4 women and children in Port-au-Prince don't have adequate access to nutrition or basic health care.
As Haiti appears to slip further towards anarchy, Caribbean leaders say it could be moving towards a political roadmap. They say all groups and political parties except one have submitted nominees for a transitional presidential council. The council is charged with selecting an interim prime minister for Haiti and putting the country on the path towards democratic elections. But some Haitians are skeptical of solutions proposed by the international community.
We don't recognize the CARICOM meetings. We don't recognize the UN Security Council meetings. We don't recognize the meetings held at the White House. Haiti's destiny has already been decided, and it's not part of any of those groups.
Outspoken gang leader Jimmy Cherizier, known as Barbecue, joined a march in defiance of a state of emergency prohibiting demonstrations. Surrounded by heavily armed members of his G9 gang collective, Cherizier has rejected what he calls foreign intervention.
Gang violence continues unabated in Port-au-Prince, despite Prime Minister Ariel Henry's announcement that he would resign last week. Forcing him from office was the stated aim of the gang insurrection, and he's been unable to return to Haiti, but there's been no let-up in the violence.
On Tuesday, police in Haiti killed at least 3 people while repelling an attack on the country's central bank. And gunmen left at least a dozen dead in an attack on supposedly safer neighborhoods on Monday. The violence and chaos have meant food and medicine are not getting into Haiti, and thousands of Haitians are trying to get out of the country. The United Nations has joined human rights activists in calling on Haiti's neighbor, the Dominican Republic, and other nations to postpone or reduce deportations.
We would like to call to the attention of the authorities of the Dominican state and government the situation that Haiti is experiencing, of humanitarian crisis, of generalized violence, of catastrophic situations, of famine.
The Dominican Republic has said deportations are part of its national security. Its government says more than 23,900 people have been deported so far this year, and more than 4,500 just this month. Dan Collins, CGTN.
Nearly 80 years ago, nuclear weapons changed the world. In 1945, the U.S. detonated 2 atomic bombs over Japan, killing hundreds of thousands. Those weapons have not been used in an armed conflict since. Eliminating the nuclear threat is a goal the UN has been working toward for decades.
It was a high-level Security Council meeting convened by Japan to discuss nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. In his address to the Council, Antonio Guterres said that almost 80 years after the attacks on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, new nuclear risks have re-emerged and any accidental launch could be catastrophic.
We meet at a time when geopolitical tensions and mistrust have escalated the risk of nuclear warfare to its highest point in decades. The doomsday clock is ticking loudly enough for all to hear. From academics and civil society groups calling for an end to the nuclear madness.
Guterres called on the 2 largest nuclear weapon states, the US and Russia, to lead the way back to meaningful arms control talks. The US representative told Council members that the global framework that has curbed nuclear armament for years is under increasing strain, accusing Russia and China of building up and diversifying its nuclear weapon stores.
Since launching its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russia has irresponsibly invoked dangerous nuclear rhetoric and walked away from several of its arms control obligations.
China says everyone should commit to a political solution and safeguard the international nuclear non-proliferation regime.
The United States' allegations against China are totally groundless and do not hold any water. It is precisely the U.S. who should continue to fulfill their special and priority responsibility to further reduce their nuclear arsenals in a drastic and substantive manner, so as to create conditions for other nuclear weapon states to join the nuclear disarmament process and to play a lead-by-example role, recognized by all parties, rather than self-styled.
The UN says it remains concerned about the risks of the use of nuclear weapons. It urged countries, especially those armed with nuclear weapons, to start re-engaging in dialogue to develop transparency and confidence-building measures to prevent any use of a nuclear weapon, saying nuclear weapon states must also reaffirm the moratoria on nuclear testing in line with the 1996 Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.
It is so decided.
The General Assembly approved the first ever UN resolution on artificial intelligence. It's the result of months of negotiations and was adopted by consensus, meaning it has the support of all 193 member states. The resolution aims to ensure equal access to AI for countries around the globe. It also seeks to make sure developing nations are involved in decision-making about the powerful technology. The UN also hopes to use AI to help reach the Sustainable Development Goals.
Coming up.
A gender-equal international system, it's a win-win. It's not that if you win, I lose. It's if you win, we all win.
UN Insider.
More than 100 million women and girls could be lifted out of poverty if government prioritized education, healthcare, fair and equal wages, and expanded social benefits.
We want equality in all these opportunities. Let us empower young women and girls. Let us be their allies and not opponents.
The UN headquarters is hosting the largest annual gathering on gender equality and women's empowerment. This year, the Commission on the Status of Women focused on accelerating gender equality by addressing poverty and building stronger institutions. I sat down with Maria Fernanda Espinosa. She's a former UN General Assembly president and also served as Foreign Minister of Ecuador. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very happy to be with you again, Elaine. It's a pleasure.
When you look around the world at the future and the opportunities for young women and girls, what do you see?
Wherever you look, there are young women that are super capable, fit for any challenge ahead, and yet we continue to have gaps in representation, in participation, in leadership. I think that this is a structural inequality that should and can be overcome with affirmative action, with a quota system, with changing the culture that is still, unfortunately, very much male-dominated.
Well, and you are here for CSW 68, which is the largest gathering of women, to talk about some of those things, addressing inequalities, violence, discrimination. What are you hearing and what are you hoping to learn?
Well, this is the biggest gathering not only of women, but one of the biggest gatherings in the UN in New York. It's more than 10,000, mostly women present. CSW 68 is addressing a very critical issue, which is the issue of poverty, of inequalities, and of the crying need of empowering women on the economic front. If we are to eradicate poverty around the world, we cannot leave half of the world's population behind. And every number that you look around, because unfortunately poverty has increased, but it has increased more among women. The dropping of schools worldwide because of COVID and after COVID, you know, what are the part of the population that has not gone back to school for various reasons? Girls are, you know, overrepresented, and women and girls still underrepresented. For example, in the digital gap, you know, access to internet, access to credit, access to fair pay. There's still a lot of homework to do. Unfortunately, we heard only 50% of the SDGs are on track. And the financing gap for SDG 5 on gender equality and women's rights is huge. And it's not that we are in shortage of money, Elaine, it's that we are in shortage of the political will that needs to be, you know, put into making sure that women and girls around the world can enjoy in full their rights and a life with dignity and happiness.
How do you begin changing the political will?
Well, I think it's an effort from different angles. So you need the right legislation in place, you need the right policies in place, you need the right leaders that are feminists in place, but also you need alliances and partnerships, not only with women, but also with men, because a gender equal international system, it's a win-win. It's not that if you win, I lose. It's if you win, we all win, because we have seen what women are capable of doing when they are in positions of power.
Today we're seeing more women and girls in the middle of conflict across the world. Gaza, for example, Ukraine, Sudan, Haiti. What are some of the conversations taking place at the UN to help these women?
In situations of conflict, women and girls pay the highest price, but we shouldn't look at them as victims only. We should look at them as peacemakers, as change makers, as mediators, as key agents in any, you know, peace process. So it goes both ways. You know, it's understanding that yes, they are the ones the most affected in conflict. They are used as weapons of war sometimes, but we have also seen, you know, women, you know, leading in terms of resilience, in terms of capacity to respond to the impacts of conflict, including on climate change. But we have seen, you know, the huge difference that we see when women participate in peace negotiations, in peace agreement, in reconstruction initiatives. I think that any initiative regarding peace and response to conflict and prevention of conflict has to have women at the center.
China considers educational equity a basic goal and the foundation for gender equality. I want to get your thoughts on China's efforts and the importance of access to education.
More and more we see young women scientists from China. We see women diplomats making the difference in the international space. And in the international scene, we see more and more, women in positions of decision making from China. So I would say that when we advocate for affirmative action, I think that China has made big efforts towards that end, but the effort should continue, and the gender gaps should continue to be smaller and smaller in all fronts. Step one is equal opportunity in education, access to quality education, but also then access to positions of decision making. I think that's the challenge that we continue to face worldwide.
Ms. Maria Fernanda Espinosa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Elaine. It was a pleasure, as always.
Coming up.
I think I've impacted my audience, especially the female in the refugee camp.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
More than 108 million people around the world have been forcibly displaced, and those numbers are growing every day. In northwestern Kenya, one woman is using her voice to inform and uplift the people living in the Kakuma refugee camp.
This is FFM Community Radio. In the heart of the Kakuma refugee camp, a powerful voice resonates through the airwaves.
Village Reception Center.
IVC Polico has created a platform that celebrates the achievements and struggles of women refugees.
As one of the two female presenters here in the camp or in the refugee or at FFM, I think it gives me fulfillment, because whenever I go home, I just know that, okay, my audience I think I've impacted my audience, especially the female in the refugee camp.
This is FFM Community Radio.
Ambapo usemi wako ni sauti yetu, tukiwa tunakupeperishia moja kwa moja kutoka.
She sheds light on issues that restrict women, girls and youth from achieving their full potential professionally and in their everyday lives. Our show provides a platform for open discussion. The community radio station has since grown in popularity among the refugees, disseminating valuable information across the camp.
It has empowered so many women, like mostly it encourages women in business, because it visits businesses, it goes to where people are being trained, especially women, and then they air out their views.
We involve a lot in ensuring that the community gets information in regard to what is needed to be done across the camp. For instance, we give educational information or educational programs in regard to various aspects of all areas that are involved in the camp.
Okay, assume mimi ni mfanyabiashara ambaye
Sipoliko's dedication to fostering a community of support and empowerment has gained a loyal following of listeners.
Program ya REF-FM.
We love REF-FM programs. They inform us about what is happening. For instance, the program called Jasho Langu, presented by Ivy Sipoliko and Jojo Luanda. They help us to learn Swahili, but above all, I love the music. The entertainment is good, especially when we are working.
Sipoliko amplifies the voices of marginalized women in a world where they are often not heard despite the challenges and injustices they continue to face.
For Ivy Sipoliko and many others, the REF-FM radio is not just a broadcast platform, it's a lifeline, a source of resilience, and a testament to the incredible ability of individuals to create change, one inspiring story at a time. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Kakuma Refugee Camp, Kenya.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.